Hello, my friend. Listen, I need to tell you something that nobody else will say to your face. Right now, at this very moment, there's a voice inside your head that's been lying to you for years. It's been whispering doubts, painting disasters, and building walls between you and everything you've ever wanted. And here's the part that's going to sting. You've been believing it. You've been treating this voice like it's your wisest advisor when it's actually your biggest saboteur. Every dream you've shelved, every opportunity you've walked away from, every version of yourself you've never become. That voice played a role in all of it. But what if I told you that voice isn't the real you? What if I showed you how to silence it permanently? Not manage it, not negotiate with it, but completely transform how your mind operates. Because that's exactly what we're about to do together. This isn't some feel-good pep talk that wears off by tomorrow morning. This is a complete mental renovation. By the time we're done, you'll think differently, feel differently, and most importantly, act differently. But I need you fully present for this. No half measures. Sound good? Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Invisible Enemy, Living in Your Head. You know that constant commentary running through your mind. Most people think it's just normal background noise, part of being human. But here's what they don't realize. For the majority of people, that inner voice isn't helping them succeed. It's actively working against them. And the scariest part? They don't even notice it happening. Think about negative thinking like this. Imagine you hired a personal advisor to guide your life decisions. But instead of encouraging you, this advisor spends all day pointing out everything that could go wrong. Every time you consider something new, maybe switching careers, starting a relationship, or learning a new skill, this advisor immediately lists all the reasons you'll fail. Remember when you tried that thing 5 years ago and it didn't work? Well, this will be worse. What if people laugh at you? What if you waste your time? What if you're just not smart enough? That's exactly what negative thinking does. It operates like a consultant you never hired, can't fire, and whose only job is to keep you exactly where you are. Here's something interesting. The last time you wanted to do something important, maybe it was asking for that promotion, starting that side project, or even just speaking your mind in a group setting. What happened? Did your brain immediately start generating scenarios? Probably not good ones, right? Your mind likely started showing you a highlight reel of potential disasters. You bombing the interview, everyone thinking your idea is stupid, looking foolish in front of people who matter to you. That automatic response, that's negative thinking doing its job. And its job is to keep you safe. But here's the catch. The safety it provides is the safety of staying small, playing it safe, and never discovering what you're actually capable of. The real damage isn't just feeling bad temporarily. The real cost shows up in what you don't do, the projects you never start, the conversations you never have, the risks you never take. Think about all the times you've talked yourself out of something before even trying. That's not wisdom. That's negative thinking wearing wisdom's mask. And here's where it gets really interesting. Negative thinking is actually addictive. Your brain becomes hooked on it because expecting the worst feels safer than hoping for the best. It's like your mind would rather prepare for disappointment than risk being surprised by failure. So it keeps you in this comfortable zone of low expectations and minimal effort. This creates what I call the downward spiral pattern. You think negatively, which makes you feel worse. Feeling worse means you take less action. Taking less action means you get fewer results. Fewer results. Give your brain more evidence that you're not capable. And boom, the cycle strengthens and repeats. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in this loop. They accept that I'm just a pessimist, or I'm naturally anxious, or I'm not a confident person. They've convinced themselves that this negative voice is actually protecting them from disappointment. But protection from what exactly? Protection from growth? Protection from success? Protection from becoming who they could be? That's not protection. That's a prison sentence. And the warden is your own thought patterns. Now, here's the truth that changes everything. Every successful person you admire has dealt with the exact same negative thoughts you have. The difference isn't that they don't experience doubt, fear, or self-criticism. The difference is they've learned to recognize these thoughts for what they are. Mental noise, not reality. And they've developed the skill to act despite them, not because of them. This is the skill that separates people who achieve their goals from people who just dream about them. The ability to hear your brain's objections and consciously choose not to let them control your decisions. The ability to redirect your mental energy toward solutions instead of dwelling on problems. The ability to focus on possibilities instead of getting stuck in limitations. But here's the challenge we're facing. Your brain doesn't want to give up negative thinking easily. It's been using this pattern for years, maybe decades. These neural pathways are deeply carved into your mind. Your brain has gotten comfortable with negativity because negativity feels predictable and familiar. That's why you can't just decide, I'm going to think positively now and expect it to stick. That's why affirmations and motivational quotes fail for most people after a few days. You're not just changing surface thoughts. You're rewiring fundamental programming. You're challenging patterns that have been strengthening through repetition for potentially your entire adult life. This is why I said at the beginning, this is mental renovation, not mental decoration. We're not putting a fresh coat of paint on broken structures. We're rebuilding from the foundation up. But here's the good news. Once you understand how negative thinking actually works, why your brain creates it, how it operates, and where it's vulnerable, you can systematically dismantle it. You can replace destructive patterns with constructive ones. You can literally rewire your brain to default to possibility thinking instead of disaster thinking, and that's exactly what we're going to do together. Chapter 2. Why your brain keeps setting you up for failure. Let me share something that might surprise you. Your brain isn't broken. It's not defective. All that negative thinking? It's actually your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that it's solving for the wrong problem. Here's what I mean. Your brain evolved over millions of years with one primary mission: keep you alive, not happy, not successful, not fulfilled, just alive. And in the dangerous world our ancestors lived in, the brains that survived were the paranoid ones. The brains constantly scanning for threats. The brains always preparing for worst-case scenarios. The brains that assumed everything unfamiliar was potentially deadly. Scientists call this the negativity bias, and it's hardwired into every human brain. Your brain is literally designed to pay more attention to negative information than positive information. It remembers failures more vividly than successes. It focuses on what could go wrong rather than what could go right. Think about it like this. Imagine your ancestor thousands of years ago heard a rustling sound in the bushes. The brain that thought, probably just the wind, and stayed put? That brain sometimes got eaten by predators. The brain that thought, could be a tiger, better run? That brain survived and passed on its genes. Even if it was wrong 99 times, that one time it was right saved its life. So guess which type of brain you inherited? The paranoid one. The one that assumes danger, the one that treats every uncertainty as a potential threat. But here's the problem we face today. We're no longer living in that dangerous world. You're not going to be eaten by a predator if you start that business. You won't die if someone rejects you. You won't be cast out of your community if you voice an unpopular opinion. But your brain doesn't know that. It's still running the same ancient software, treating every challenge like a life or death situation. Let me paint you a picture. Say you're considering a major career change, maybe leaving your stable job to start your own company. What happens in your mind? Within seconds, your brain starts generating scenarios. What if you run out of money? What if your idea fails? What if people think you're crazy? What if you're not talented enough? What if the market crashes? What if you end up worse off than before? Notice something? Your brain can generate an unlimited number of disaster scenarios. It's incredibly creative when it comes to imagining what could go wrong. But here's what it doesn't do automatically. It doesn't spend equal energy imagining success scenarios. It doesn't naturally generate thoughts about how proud you'll feel building something of your own, how free you'll be making your own decisions, or how much you'll grow from the challenge. This isn't an accident. This is your brain's ancient programming in action. From an evolutionary perspective, it's better to be wrong about danger than wrong about safety. If you assume there's a threat when there isn't one, you waste some energy being cautious. If you assume there's no threat when there is one, you die. But in today's world, this programming isn't just unhelpful. It's actively destructive. The things that will actually harm you in modern life aren't the things your brain is worried about. The real threats to your well-being are stagnation, complacency, and never discovering your potential. The real danger isn't taking risks. It's playing it so safe that you never really live. Your brain is protecting you from imaginary dangers while exposing you to real ones. It's keeping you safe from failure while guaranteeing mediocrity. It's preventing you from getting hurt while ensuring you never experience what you're truly capable of. Here's the revolutionary insight. Once you understand that negative thoughts are not insights or truth, they're just your brain's default response to anything unfamiliar, you can start seeing them differently. They're not messages from your wisest self. They're automated alarm bells going off even when there's no fire. Think of it like a car alarm that's too sensitive. It goes off when someone walks by too close, when the wind blows hard, when a truck drives past. The alarm is doing its job, trying to protect the car, but it's creating more problems than it's solving because it can't tell the difference between real threats and false alarms. Your brain works the same way with negative thinking. It can't tell the difference between this might be uncomfortable and this is actually dangerous. So it treats everything new, challenging, or uncertain as if it's life-threatening. And it floods your consciousness with negative thoughts to convince you to avoid the perceived threat. Now here's what this means for you practically. Those negative thoughts aren't truth. They're your brain's overreactive alarm system. When your mind tells you you're not good enough, or this won't work, or you should just play it safe. That's not wisdom. That's ancient programming trying to keep you in your comfort zone. The most successful people don't have different brains than you. They have the same negativity bias, the same ancient programming, the same tendency to imagine worst-case scenarios. The difference is they've learned to recognize these thoughts as automated responses rather than accurate predictions. They've learned to act in spite of the alarm bells, not because of them. This is the fundamental skill we're building, not the ability to stop having negative thoughts. That's impossible given how your brain is wired. But the ability to have those thoughts without letting them control your behavior. The ability to hear the alarm and consciously decide whether it's a real threat or a false alarm. Your brain isn't your enemy, but it's not automatically your ally either when it comes to growth and achievement. It's a tool, and right now, it's being used to limit your potential. But once you understand how it works, you can start using it to expand your potential instead. Chapter 3. The 4 Flavors of Mental Poison. Negative thinking isn't just one thing. It's actually a system, a collection of different patterns that work together to keep you stuck. To effectively eliminate negative thinking, you need to understand the different types and how each one sabotages you in its own unique way. I've identified 4 primary types of mental poison that destroy most people's potential. Each has its own characteristics, its own triggers, and its own devastating effects. Once you can spot these patterns in your own thinking, you can start dismantling them systematically. The first type, catastrophic thinking. This is when your brain takes any situation and immediately jumps to the absolute worst possible outcome. You don't just consider what might go wrong. You assume everything will go wrong in the most dramatic way imaginable. Catastrophic thinking sounds like this in your head. If I start this venture, I'll lose everything and end up homeless. If I speak up in that meeting, everyone will think I'm an idiot and I'll get fired. If I try to get healthy, I'll probably injure myself and end up worse than before. If I put myself out there, I'll get rejected and humiliated publicly. Notice the pattern? Your brain doesn't just consider the possibility of failure. It assumes complete and total disaster. It doesn't think about setbacks. It imagines absolute destruction. This type of thinking is particularly toxic because it makes any risk seem completely unreasonable. When your mind is convinced that trying something new will lead to catastrophe, taking action becomes nearly impossible. The second type, all or nothing thinking. This is when your brain sees everything in black and white, with no middle ground, no shades of gray, no room for partial success or learning from mistakes, you're either perfect or you're a complete failure. You either succeed completely or you've wasted your time. All or nothing thinking sounds like this. If I can't do this perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. If I mess up once, I've ruined everything. If I'm not the best, I might as well quit. If this doesn't work exactly as I planned, it's a total failure. This pattern is devastating because it makes any setback feel like total defeat. When you believe that anything less than perfection equals failure, you become paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. You either don't start at all, or you quit the moment things get difficult. The third type, victim thinking. This is when your brain convinces you that everything bad that happens is someone else's fault, that you have no control over your circumstances, that you're powerless to change your situation. You become addicted to feeling sorry for yourself and making excuses for why you can't succeed. Victim thinking sounds like this. I can't succeed because I didn't have the right opportunities growing up. It's unfair that other people have advantages I don't have. The economy is terrible. That's why I can't get ahead. If I had been born into a different family, things would be different. The whole system is designed to keep people like me down. This type of thinking is particularly insidious because it often feels justified. There are always external factors that make success harder. There are always unfair advantages that other people have. But victim thinking takes these real challenges and uses them as excuses to stop trying, to give up on goals, to accept mediocrity as inevitable. The fourth type, comparison thinking. This is when your brain becomes obsessed with measuring your progress, your success, your worth against other people. Instead of focusing on your own growth, you become consumed with whether you're ahead or behind everyone else. Comparison thinking sounds like this. Everyone else is further ahead than I am. I'm too old to start now. Look at all these younger people who are already successful. I'll never be as talented as that person, so why even try? Everyone else makes this look easy. I must not be cut out for it. This pattern is toxic because it makes your sense of progress dependent on other people's achievements. When you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you either feel superior and become complacent, or you feel inferior and become discouraged. Either way, you stop focusing on what you actually need to do to improve your own situation. Now here's what makes these patterns so dangerous. They usually work together. You might start with comparison thinking, noticing that other people seem more successful than you. Then you shift into victim thinking, focusing on how unfair it is that they had better opportunities. Then you engage in catastrophic thinking, imagining how trying to change your situation will only make things worse. And finally, you settle into all or nothing thinking, convincing yourself that unless you can guarantee perfect success, there's no point in trying at all. The most dangerous thing about these patterns is that they feel logical. Your brain presents them as rational analysis, as realistic assessment, as practical wisdom. But they're not rational. They're emotional reactions disguised as logical thoughts. They're fear and insecurity wearing the mask of intelligence. Each of these patterns serves the same ultimate purpose. They give you reasons not to take action. They provide seemingly valid justifications for staying comfortable, avoiding risks, and maintaining the status quo. They protect you from the possibility of failure by ensuring you never really try. But here's what they don't protect you from: the slow, grinding pain of regret, the daily frustration of knowing you're capable of more but not doing anything about it, the long-term consequences of playing it safe while your dreams slowly fade away. The people who achieve extraordinary things don't have different thoughts than you. They experience the same doubts, the same fears, the same mental poison. The difference is they've learned to recognize these thoughts as mental poison, not as truth. They've learned to see catastrophic thinking as paranoia, all-or-nothing thinking as perfectionism, victim thinking as excuse-making, and comparison thinking as distraction. Most importantly, they've learned that having these thoughts doesn't mean they have to obey them. You can have a catastrophic thought and still take action. You can notice yourself thinking in all-or-nothing terms and still pursue gradual progress. You can feel like a victim and still take responsibility for your future. You can compare yourself to others and still focus on your own path. The goal isn't to never have these thoughts. That's impossible. The goal is to recognize them when they arise, understand what they're trying to do to you, and refuse to let them control your behavior. Chapter 4. How Negative Thoughts Actually Work. If you want to effectively eliminate negative thinking, you need to understand exactly how these thoughts operate. Most people treat thoughts like they're facts, as if thinking something makes it true. But thoughts aren't facts. They're mental events that arise and pass through your consciousness. And once you understand the mechanics of how a negative thought works, you can learn to take it apart and neutralize it. Every negative thought follows the same basic blueprint. It has a trigger, an emotional response, a narrative, and a conclusion. Understanding each component gives you multiple intervention points where you can break the cycle. The trigger. This is the external event or internal sensation that kicks off the negative thought process. It could be anything. Seeing someone who seems more successful than you, remembering a past mistake, facing an unfamiliar challenge, feeling uncertain about tomorrow, or even just having too much quiet time alone with your thoughts. Here's something crucial to understand. Triggers aren't inherently negative. The same trigger that produces negative thoughts in one person might produce constructive thoughts in another. The trigger is just the starting point. What matters is how your brain processes it. Let me give you an example. Say you see a job posting for a position you'd really want. For someone with healthy thinking patterns, this trigger might produce thoughts like, "This looks interesting. I should definitely apply. I have several of the qualifications they're looking for. Even if I don't get this particular position, the application process will be valuable practice." But for someone stuck in negative thinking patterns, that exact same trigger produces completely different thoughts. "I'm not qualified enough. They'll never choose someone like me. I'll just embarrass myself if I apply. There are probably hundreds of better candidates. Why even bother?" Same trigger, completely different mental response. This is crucial because it means negative thinking isn't caused by your circumstances. It's caused by how your brain interprets those circumstances. The emotional response. After the trigger comes the emotional response. This is where your body reacts with physical sensations: anxiety, fear, frustration, sadness. Your heart rate might spike. Your breathing might get shallow. Your muscles might tense up. You might feel that sinking sensation in your stomach or that tightness across your chest. Most people think the external event causes the emotion directly. They think, "I saw that job posting and it made me anxious." But that's not accurate. The sequence is actually trigger to thought to emotion. The job posting doesn't make you anxious. Your thoughts about the job posting create the anxiety. This distinction is absolutely critical because it means you have more control than you think. You can't always control what happens around you, but you can learn to influence how you think about what happens. And when you change the thought, the emotion changes automatically. The narrative, the third component, is where your brain creates a story to explain and justify the emotional response. This narrative usually sounds completely rational and logical, even though it's actually based on assumptions, projections, and fears, rather than objective facts. Using our job posting example, the narrative might sound like this: "I've been in my current role for 3 years without a promotion. That clearly proves I don't have what it takes to advance. This new position requires 5 years of experience, and I only have 3. They probably want someone who went to a more prestigious school than I did. Even if I somehow got an interview, I'd probably say something foolish and embarrass myself. And even if by some miracle I got the job, I'd probably fail at it and get fired. Then I'd be worse off than I am now, and everyone would know I couldn't handle it." Notice how the narrative takes a simple trigger, seeing a job posting, and spins it into an elaborate story of inevitable failure. The story feels convincing because it references some real facts. You have been in your position for 3 years. The job does require 5 years of experience, but it combines these facts with assumptions and projections that have zero basis in reality. The conclusion, the fourth component, is where your brain decides what action to take based on the story it just created. And because negative thinking always tells stories of failure and disaster, the conclusion is almost always identical: don't take action. In our example, the conclusion would be, "I shouldn't apply for this job because I'll just get rejected and feel worse about myself." This conclusion feels like the logical result of careful analysis, but it's actually the predetermined outcome your brain was working toward from the beginning. Here's the most important thing to understand about this whole process. It happens automatically and almost instantly. From trigger to conclusion, the entire sequence can unfold in just a few seconds. By the time you're consciously aware of what's happening, your brain has already decided that taking action is too risky, and you've already started feeling the emotions that will keep you stuck. But once you understand this blueprint, you can learn to intervene at each stage. You can't always control what triggers you encounter, but you can learn to recognize them and prepare for your brain's likely response. You can learn to notice emotional reactions as they start arising and remind yourself that feelings aren't facts. They're just your body's response to your thoughts. You can learn to question the narratives your brain creates and demand evidence for its dramatic conclusions. And you can learn to override the automatic conclusion with conscious decision-making. The key to all of this is developing awareness. Most people go through this entire process unconsciously. They encounter a trigger, feel bad, accept whatever narrative their brain generates, and then act on the conclusion without ever examining whether any of it actually makes sense. But successful people have learned to slow down this process. They've trained themselves to catch negative thoughts in real time and examine them critically. They've developed the habit of asking questions like, is this thought helping me or limiting me? What actual evidence do I have that this story is accurate? What would I tell a close friend who was thinking this way? What action would I take if I weren't operating from fear? This doesn't happen overnight. It takes consistent practice to develop the awareness and skill to dissect negative thoughts as they arise. But once you master this ability, negative thinking loses its grip on you. You stop being controlled by your thoughts and start directing them instead. Remember, the goal isn't to never have negative thoughts. That's impossible given how our brains are wired. The goal is to recognize negative thoughts as mental events, not as truth. To see them as one possible interpretation of reality, not the only interpretation. To understand that just because you think something doesn't mean you have to believe it. And just because you believe something doesn't mean you have to act on it. Chapter 5. Breaking Free in Real Time. Understanding how negative thoughts work is important, but it's not enough. You need practical techniques you can use in the moment when those thoughts arise. This is where most people struggle. They understand the theory, but when negative thinking actually shows up, they still get swept away by it. Breaking free from negative thinking requires a systematic approach. You need specific steps you can follow when your mind starts going down that familiar dark path. Step 1. Recognition. You cannot change what you don't notice. Most negative thinking happens below conscious awareness. You start feeling bad, and by the time you realize what's happening, you've already been thinking negatively for several minutes or even hours. To develop recognition, you need to become a detective of your own mind. Start checking in with yourself regularly throughout the day. Set reminders on your phone if needed. Every hour, pause and ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? How am I feeling? What story is my mind telling me? The goal isn't to judge these thoughts or immediately change them. The goal is simply to notice them. You can't break a pattern you're not aware of. Pay attention to your body as well. Negative thinking almost always produces physical symptoms. Tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, that knot in your stomach, shallow breathing. These physical signals often appear before you're consciously aware of the negative thoughts, so they can serve as early warning systems. When you notice these physical sensations, stop and ask, what was I just thinking about? Often, you'll discover your brain was running negative scenarios without your conscious knowledge. Step 2. Interruption. Once you recognize that you're caught in negative thinking, you need to interrupt the pattern immediately. The longer you allow these thoughts to continue, the stronger they become and the harder they are to stop. One of the most effective interruption techniques is what I call the mental circuit breaker. As soon as you notice negative thinking, mentally shout, "Stop." Visualize a bright red stop sign in your mind. Some people find it helpful to actually say "stop" out loud or even clap their hands to create a physical interruption. This might seem overly simple, but it works because it breaks the automatic flow of negative thoughts. It creates a moment of conscious awareness where you can choose what to think next instead of being carried along by negative momentum. Another powerful technique is the pattern break. Do something physical that completely changes your state. Stand up and stretch. Take 5 deep breaths. Splash cold water on your face. Go for a quick walk around the block. The goal is to disrupt the negative thinking pattern by changing your physiology. Your mind and body are deeply connected. When you're thinking negatively, your body adopts a negative posture. Shoulders slumped, head down, breathing shallow. By consciously changing your physical state, you can influence your mental state. Step 3. Challenge. Once you've interrupted the negative thinking pattern, you need to challenge the thoughts that were running through your mind. This means questioning them, demanding evidence, examining them critically instead of accepting them as truth. Ask yourself these questions. Is this thought based on facts or on fears? What actual evidence do I have that this thought is accurate? What evidence do I have that contradicts this thought? How is this thought helping me move forward? What would I tell someone I care about who was thinking this way? Most negative thoughts cannot withstand careful examination. They're built on assumptions, worst-case scenarios, and emotional reactions rather than objective reality. When you start demanding evidence and asking critical questions, the thoughts often reveal themselves to be much less convincing than they initially seemed. For example, if you're thinking, "I'm not capable enough to start my own project," challenge that. What evidence do I actually have that I'm not capable? What does capable enough even mean in this context? Do I need to be the most capable person in the world, or just capable enough to start and learn as I go? What about all the less capable people who've successfully started similar projects? What skills do I have that would be valuable? What could I learn if I don't know something yet? Step 4. Replacement. After you've interrupted and challenged the negative thought, you need to replace it with a more productive thought. This isn't about forced positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing thoughts that help you take action instead of thoughts that keep you stuck. Instead of thinking, "I'm not capable enough to start this project," you might replace it with, "I may not know everything yet, but I can learn. I have skills and experience that would be valuable. Even if I make mistakes, I'll learn something that makes me better prepared for the next opportunity." Instead of thinking, "I'll probably fail," you might replace it with, "Success isn't guaranteed, but neither is failure. I'm willing to try and learn from whatever happens. The only guaranteed failure is not trying at all." The replacement thought doesn't have to be wildly optimistic. It just has to be more realistic and more conducive to taking action than the original negative thought. Step 5. Action. This is the most crucial step, and it's where most people fail. They successfully interrupt, challenge, and replace their negative thoughts. But then they go back to their normal activities without taking any action toward their goals. But here's the truth. The best way to prove to your brain that negative thoughts are wrong is to take action in spite of them. Every time you act despite negative thinking, you weaken that pattern. Every time you let negative thoughts stop you from acting, you strengthen it. The action doesn't have to be massive. It can be as simple as making one phone call, sending one message, or taking one small step toward your goal. The key is to take some action while the positive momentum is fresh before negative thinking has a chance to regain control. This 5-step process, recognize, interrupt, challenge, replace, action, becomes easier with practice. At first, it will feel mechanical and awkward. You might not catch negative thoughts until they've been running for a while. You might struggle to come up with good challenges or replacements. You might forget to take action. That's completely normal. Like any skill, this takes time to develop. But if you commit to practicing this process consistently, it will become more automatic. You'll start catching negative thoughts earlier. You'll get better at challenging them and replacing them with productive thoughts. And most importantly, you'll start taking action despite negative thinking, which will gradually reprogram your brain to default to more constructive patterns. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. You will still have negative thoughts. You will still sometimes get caught in negative thinking loops. But each time you practice this process, you're building the mental strength that will eventually allow you to control your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. Chapter 6. Rewiring your brain's operating system. Understanding and interrupting negative thinking is important, but it's only the beginning. Now you need to understand how to physically rewire your brain so it defaults to constructive thinking patterns instead of destructive ones. This isn't metaphorical. This is literal brain restructuring that you can accomplish through specific mental exercises and behavioral changes. Your brain operates on a principle called neuroplasticity, which means it can literally reshape itself based on how you use it. Every thought you think strengthens certain neural pathways while weakening others. Every action you take creates new connections while allowing old ones to fade. This means your current thinking patterns aren't permanent. They're just the result of years of repetition. Think of your brain like a forest with countless paths running through it. The negative thinking patterns are like well-worn highways that have been traveled so many times they've become deep grooves. When a thought enters your mind, it naturally follows these established pathways because they're the path of least resistance. But here's the revolutionary truth. You can create new pathways. You can build new mental highways that lead to different destinations. And if you travel these new pathways consistently while avoiding the old ones, the old negative pathways will eventually become overgrown and unusable, while the new constructive pathways become your new defaults. This process requires 3 specific types of mental training that most people never do. First, awareness training. Most people live their entire lives on mental autopilot. They think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and take the same actions day after day without ever examining whether these patterns are serving them. But you cannot change patterns you're not aware of. So developing moment-to-moment awareness of your thinking is absolutely essential. Set up awareness triggers throughout your day. Every time you check your phone, ask yourself, what have I been thinking about for the last hour? Every time you feel a strong emotion, pause and ask, what thought just triggered this feeling? Every time you feel resistance to taking action, stop and examine. What story is my brain telling me right now? The goal is not to judge or immediately change your thoughts. The goal is simply to notice them. You're developing the ability to observe your own mind from a detached perspective, like a scientist studying an interesting specimen. This observer perspective is crucial because it creates space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to see them as mental events rather than absolute truths. Practice what I call the 2-minute awareness drill. Set a timer for 2 minutes and do nothing but observe your thoughts without trying to control them. Don't meditate. Don't try to empty your mind. Just watch what thoughts arise and notice how they flow from one to another. Most people discover that their minds are far more chaotic and negative than they realized. This awareness alone will begin shifting your mental patterns in a positive direction. Second, cognitive rehearsal. This means deliberately practicing productive thoughts until they become automatic. Just like you can train your body to perform physical movements through repetition, you can train your brain to produce specific thoughts through mental rehearsal. Create a list of your most common negative thoughts and write down a productive alternative for each one. For example, if you often think, I'm not good enough, your alternative might be, I'm constantly learning and improving. If you think, this will never work, your alternative might be, I'll figure out how to make this work or learn something valuable in the process. Practice these alternative thoughts daily. Spend 5 minutes each morning and evening deliberately thinking these new thoughts. Don't just repeat them like meaningless phrases. Actually focus on the meaning and imagine what your life would be like if you truly believed them. Visualize yourself acting with confidence, taking calculated risks, persisting through challenges, and achieving your goals. The key is emotional engagement. Your brain pays more attention to thoughts that are accompanied by strong emotions. So when you practice your new thought patterns, don't just think them, feel them. Generate excitement about your potential, satisfaction about your progress, determination about your goals. The stronger the emotional charge, the deeper the new patterns will be carved into your brain. Third, action that contradicts negative beliefs. But the most powerful way to rewire your brain is through action that contradicts your negative thoughts. Every time you act despite fear, every time you persist despite doubt, every time you take a risk despite uncertainty, you're sending a powerful message to your brain that the negative thoughts were wrong. Your brain learns from results, not from intentions. You can practice positive thinking all day long, but if you never take action that challenges your negative beliefs, your brain will continue treating those beliefs as accurate. However, when you consistently take action that proves negative thoughts wrong, your brain has no choice but to update its programming. Start with small actions that directly contradict your most limiting beliefs. If you believe you're not confident enough to speak up, force yourself to ask one question in every meeting. If you believe you're not disciplined enough to maintain habits, Commit to one small daily practice and follow through no matter what. If you believe you're not capable of learning new skills, dedicate 30 minutes each day to studying something challenging. These actions might feel uncomfortable or even scary at first. That's completely normal. Your brain will resist because you're literally asking it to abandon patterns that have been its default for years or decades. But discomfort is the price of growth. Every moment of discomfort you endure while taking productive action is literally rewiring your brain for future success. Track your progress obsessively. Keep detailed records of every time you catch a negative thought and replace it with a productive one. Record every time you take action despite fear or doubt. Celebrate every small victory, because each one is evidence that your brain is changing. Most people give up on this process too early because they don't see immediate results. But neuroplasticity takes time. You didn't develop negative thinking patterns overnight, and you won't eliminate them overnight either. But if you consistently practice awareness, rehearse new thought patterns, and take action that contradicts negative beliefs, you will literally reshape your brain. The timeline varies for different people, but most people start noticing significant changes within 30 to 60 days of consistent practice. They find that negative thoughts arise less frequently and have less emotional impact when they do arise. They notice that constructive thoughts start appearing automatically in situations where they used to default to negativity. Most importantly, they find that taking action becomes easier because their brain is no longer constantly generating reasons not to try. This is not wishful thinking or positive affirmations. This is brain training based on neuroscience. You're not trying to convince yourself that everything is perfect or that success is guaranteed. You're simply training your brain to focus on possibilities instead of problems, solutions instead of obstacles, action instead of excuses. Chapter 7. Advanced Detection and Elimination. Now that you understand how to rewire your brain, you need to develop advanced skills for detecting and eliminating negative thoughts before they can take root. Most people only notice negative thinking after it's already affected their mood and motivation. But you can learn to catch these thoughts much earlier in the process, sometimes even before they fully form in your consciousness. Advanced thought detection requires understanding the early warning signs that negative thinking is beginning to emerge. These signs appear in your body, your emotions, and your behavior before the actual thoughts become clear in your mind. By learning to recognize these signals, you can intervene much more quickly and effectively. Warning. Sign 1. Physical tension. Negative thinking almost always produces physical stress responses. Tightness in your jaw, tension in your shoulders, clenching in your stomach, changes in your breathing pattern. These physical responses often occur within seconds of a negative thought arising, sometimes before you're even consciously aware of what you're thinking. Start conducting regular body scans throughout your day. Every hour, take 30 seconds to check in with your physical state. Are your shoulders tense? Is your jaw clenched? Is your breathing shallow? Are you holding tension anywhere in your body? When you notice physical tension, immediately ask yourself, what was I just thinking about? Often, you'll discover that your mind was running negative scenarios without your conscious knowledge. Warning sign 2. Emotional shifts. Your emotions respond to your thoughts almost instantaneously. A sudden feeling of anxiety, discouragement, frustration, or hopelessness usually indicates that negative thinking has begun, even if you haven't identified the specific thoughts yet. Develop emotional awareness by rating your mood on a scale of 1 to 10 every few hours. When you notice your mood dropping, stop and trace backward. When did I start feeling this way? What was happening right before my mood shifted? What thoughts might have triggered this emotional change? This backward tracing often reveals negative thought patterns that were operating below your conscious awareness. Warning sign 3. Behavioral changes. Negative thinking affects your actions before you're fully aware of it. You might start procrastinating on important tasks, avoiding social interactions, consuming more entertainment or distractions, or engaging in other avoidance behaviors. These behavioral shifts are often the first visible signs that negative thinking has taken control. Pay attention to your impulses and urges throughout the day. When you suddenly feel like checking social media instead of working, watching videos instead of exercising, or avoiding a difficult conversation, ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid thinking about? What negative thoughts might be driving this behavior? Often procrastination and avoidance are attempts to escape negative thoughts rather than deal with them directly. Once you've developed the ability to detect negative thinking early, you need advanced elimination techniques that go beyond the basic recognition and replacement methods. Technique 1. Thought interrogation. When you catch a negative thought, don't just replace it. Interrogate it ruthlessly. Demand that it prove itself with evidence. Challenge every assumption it makes. Question every conclusion it draws. Treat it like you're cross-examining a hostile witness in court. For example, if the thought is, "I'll never be successful," interrogate it. What exactly do you mean by successful? What evidence do you have that I'll never achieve success? What definition of success are you using? How many different paths to success have I actually tried? What would have to be true for this statement to be accurate? What would highly successful people say about this thought? The goal is not just to find flaws in the thought, but to completely dismantle its logic until it becomes obviously ridiculous. Most negative thoughts cannot withstand serious intellectual scrutiny because they're based on emotion and fear rather than facts and logic. Technique 2. Thought starvation. Negative thoughts gain power through attention and repetition. The more you think about them, argue with them, or try to convince yourself they're wrong, the stronger they become. But you can starve them to death by completely withdrawing your attention. When a negative thought arises, acknowledge it briefly. I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not capable enough, and then immediately redirect your attention to something else. Don't engage with the thought. Don't analyze it. Don't try to argue with it. Simply shift your focus to a physical task, a current project, or anything that requires active mental engagement. This technique works because thoughts are like fires. They need the fuel of attention to keep burning. When you stop feeding them attention, they naturally fade away. The key is to be absolutely ruthless about not engaging with negative thoughts. even when they seem important or urgent. Technique 3. Thought labeling. Instead of getting caught up in the content of negative thoughts, learn to recognize them as examples of specific patterns you've already identified. When you notice catastrophic thinking, simply label it catastrophic thinking. When you catch yourself in all or nothing thinking, label it all or nothing thinking. This labeling creates psychological distance between you and the thought. Instead of being trapped inside the thought and experiencing it as reality, you're observing it from outside as a predictable mental pattern. This shifts you from being the victim of your thoughts to being the scientist studying them. Technique 4. Preemptive strikes. Once you understand your personal negative thinking patterns, you can anticipate when they're likely to arise and prepare counter strategies in advance. If you know that you always think negatively before important presentations, you can prepare specific thoughts and affirmations to use before those situations. If you know that you spiral into negative thinking when you're tired, you can have energy management strategies ready. Create a negative thinking prevention plan. Identify your most common triggers, your typical negative thought patterns, and the situations where you're most vulnerable. Then develop specific strategies for each scenario. When you encounter these situations, you'll already know exactly how to respond instead of being caught off guard. Technique 5. Replacement acceleration. Instead of trying to replace negative thoughts with slightly more positive ones, learn to replace them with thoughts that are so compelling and exciting that your brain naturally gravitates toward them. For example, instead of replacing "I might fail" with "I might succeed," replace it with "I'm about to learn something valuable that will make me stronger regardless of the outcome." Instead of replacing "this is hard" with "I can do this," replace it with "this challenge is exactly what I need to develop skills that will set me apart from everyone else." The replacement thoughts should be so much more interesting and inspiring than the negative thoughts that your brain prefers to think about them. This creates positive momentum instead of just neutral thinking. These advanced techniques require practice and patience to master. Start with one technique at a time and practice it consistently for at least 2 weeks before adding another one. The goal is to develop such strong negative thought detection and elimination skills that negative thinking rarely gets a chance to influence your emotions or actions. Remember, the ultimate goal is not to never have negative thoughts. That's impossible. The goal is to become so skilled at detecting and eliminating them that they lose their power to control your life. When negative thoughts arise, you'll notice them immediately, handle them efficiently, and get back to productive thinking without losing momentum. Chapter 8. Building immunity against negativity. Eliminating existing negative thoughts is only half the battle. The other half is building immunity against future negative thinking, so that you become naturally resistant to the mental poison that constantly tries to infect your mind. Mental immunity works similarly to physical immunity. When your body is exposed to a pathogen, your immune system recognizes it as a threat and neutralizes it before it can make you sick. Similarly, when your mind is exposed to negative thoughts, a strong mental immune system can recognize them as threats and neutralize them before they can affect your emotions and actions. Building mental immunity requires 3 core components: mental strength training, environmental design, and social immunity. Mental strength training. This is like physical exercise for your mind. Just as regular physical exercise makes your body stronger and more resistant to illness, regular mental exercise makes your mind stronger and more resistant to negative thinking. This involves deliberately exposing yourself to small amounts of mental stress and challenge so that you develop the psychological resilience to handle larger challenges without breaking down. Start with controlled adversity training. Deliberately put yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations that challenge your normal thinking patterns. Take cold showers to build tolerance for discomfort. Practice speaking in front of small groups to build confidence in facing fear. Exercise when you don't feel like it to build discipline. Have difficult conversations to build courage. The key is that these challenges are voluntary and controlled. You're choosing to face small amounts of adversity when you're mentally prepared, rather than being overwhelmed by adversity when you're unprepared. This builds psychological muscle memory that you can draw on when real challenges arise. Practice negative thought simulation. This might sound counterintuitive, but deliberately imagining worst-case scenarios and then working through how you would handle them actually makes you more resistant to negative thinking. When these scenarios arise naturally, it's like psychological vaccination, exposing yourself to a controlled dose of negativity to build immunity against the real thing. For example, if you're worried about a new venture not working out, deliberately imagine specific ways it could fail and then develop detailed plans for how you would respond to each scenario. What would you do if you ran out of resources? How would you handle criticism and rejection? What would your next steps be if the first version didn't work? This exercise accomplishes 2 things. It shows you that even worst-case scenarios are survivable and manageable, and it gives you concrete action plans that reduce uncertainty and fear. When your brain tries to scare you with negative possibilities, you can respond with, "I've already thought about that, and here's exactly what I would do." Environmental design. This is about creating external conditions that naturally promote positive thinking while discouraging negative thinking. Your environment has a massive impact on your mental state, and most people never take conscious control of this factor. Audit your information diet. What are you reading, watching, and listening to every day? If you're consuming news that focuses on disasters and problems, social media that promotes comparison and envy, or entertainment that glorifies victimhood and cynicism, you're feeding your brain exactly the kind of input that generates negative thinking. Replace passive consumption with active learning. Instead of scrolling through social media, read books about skills you want to develop. Instead of watching shows about other people's drama, listen to podcasts about achievement and growth. Instead of following news about things you can't control, study topics that will help you build the life you want. Design your physical spaces to promote positive thinking. Your workspace, your home, even your car should be organized and optimized to support productive mental states. Remove clutter that creates mental chaos. Add visual reminders of your goals and achievements. Create spaces that inspire action rather than passivity. Control your social environment ruthlessly. The people you spend time with have an enormous influence on your thinking patterns. If you're surrounded by people who constantly complain, make excuses, and focus on problems, their negativity will gradually infect your own thinking. If you're surrounded by people who take action, solve problems, and focus on growth, their positivity will elevate your own mental patterns. This doesn't mean you have to cut toxic people out of your life completely, but it does mean you need to be intentional about limiting their influence and balancing their negativity with positive influences. Seek out mentors, peers, and communities that embody the kind of thinking you want to develop. Social immunity. This is about developing the ability to maintain positive thinking even when you're surrounded by negativity. This is crucial because you can't always control your environment, and you will inevitably encounter negative people and situations. Practice emotional boundaries. Learn to observe other people's negative emotions without absorbing them. When someone complains to you, you can listen and show empathy without taking on their emotional state. When someone tries to discourage you from pursuing your goals, you can acknowledge their concerns without letting their fears become your fears. Develop opinion immunity. One of the biggest sources of negative thinking is worrying about what other people think of you. But most people's opinions are based on their own fears, limitations, and insecurities, rather than accurate assessments of your potential. Learning to value your own judgment over other people's opinions is essential for mental immunity. Practice this by making decisions based on your own values and goals, rather than on what you think others expect of you. Start with small decisions: what to wear, what to eat, how to spend your free time, and gradually work up to bigger decisions about your career, relationships, and life direction. Create positive feedback loops that reinforce mental immunity. Track and celebrate every time you successfully resist negative thinking or maintain a positive mindset in a challenging situation. Keep a daily log of mental victories, no matter how small. This creates evidence that your mental immune system is working and motivates you to continue strengthening it. The goal is to reach a point where negative thinking feels foreign and uncomfortable, like trying to wear clothes that don't fit. When your mental immune system is strong, negative thoughts will feel obviously wrong, and you'll naturally reject them without conscious effort. This level of mental immunity doesn't happen overnight, but it's absolutely achievable with consistent practice. As you build mental strength, optimize your environment, and develop social immunity, you'll find that negative thinking has less and less power over your life. Eventually, you'll reach a state where positive, productive thinking is your natural default, and negativity can only affect you if you consciously choose to engage with it. Chapter 9. The Psychology of Unstoppable Optimism. True mental mastery goes beyond just eliminating negative thinking. It requires developing what I call unstoppable optimism, a mindset so powerfully positive that it becomes your competitive advantage in every area of life. This is not naive positivity or wishful thinking. This is a scientifically grounded psychological strategy that high performers use to achieve extraordinary results. Unstoppable optimism is different from regular optimism in 3 crucial ways. First, It's based on evidence and action rather than hope and fantasy. Second, it's maintained even in the face of setbacks and failures. Third, it's weaponized, used as a tool to create results rather than just feel good. The foundation, internal locus of control. The foundation of unstoppable optimism is what psychologists call an internal locus of control. This means believing that your actions have more influence over your outcomes than external circumstances do. People with an internal locus of control see themselves as the primary driver of their success or failure. People with an external locus of control see themselves as victims of circumstances beyond their control. This belief system is not just motivational, it's practical. When you believe that your actions determine your results, you naturally focus on what you can control rather than what you can't. You spend your mental energy looking for solutions rather than dwelling on problems. You take more action because you believe action will make a difference. Develop internal locus of control by taking responsibility for everything in your life, even things that aren't technically your fault. If you get turned down for an opportunity, instead of blaming the decision makers, ask what you could have done differently in your approach. If a relationship doesn't work out, instead of focusing on the other person's flaws, examine what you could have done better. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything bad that happens. It means looking for the aspects of every situation that you can influence or control, no matter how small, and focusing your attention there. This mental habit trains your brain to see opportunities for influence rather than reasons for helplessness. Component 2. Solution-focused thinking. Most people are problem-focused. When they encounter an obstacle, they spend most of their mental energy analyzing the problem, understanding why it exists, and often complaining about it. But successful people are solution-focused. They spend minimal time on the problem and maximum time on potential solutions. Train yourself to shift immediately from problem identification to solution generation. When you encounter any challenge, give yourself exactly 60 seconds to understand the problem. Then spend all remaining time brainstorming solutions. Don't allow yourself to dwell on the problem longer than necessary to understand it. Practice solution multiplication. For every problem you identify, force yourself to generate at least 3 possible solutions. This trains your brain to see multiple paths forward rather than getting stuck thinking there's only one way to handle a situation. The more solutions you can generate, the more optimistic you'll feel about your ability to overcome any obstacle. Component 3. Failure reframing. People with unstoppable optimism don't experience failure the same way that average people do. They don't see failure as evidence that they're not capable or that their goals are unrealistic. They see failure as data that helps them improve their approach. Develop a failure portfolio, a collection of every significant failure you've experienced, along with the lessons you learned from each one. Review this portfolio regularly and notice how each failure contributed to your current knowledge and capabilities. This practice transforms failure from something to fear into something to value. When new failures occur, immediately ask yourself 3 questions. What did I learn from this? How does this information help me improve my approach? What would I do differently next time? This reframing process should happen within hours of any setback, before negative thinking has a chance to take root. Component 4. Momentum. Thinking. People with unstoppable optimism understand that success is not a single event, but a series of small wins that build momentum over time. They focus more on maintaining forward progress than on achieving perfect outcomes. Celebrate micro wins obsessively. Every small step toward your goals deserves recognition and celebration. Made one productive phone call? Celebrate. Worked out for 20 minutes? Celebrate. Had one meaningful conversation? Celebrate. These celebrations reinforce the neural pathways associated with taking action and build positive momentum that makes future action easier. Create momentum triggers. Specific actions you can take to generate positive momentum whenever you feel stuck or discouraged. This might be completing a simple task you've been avoiding, doing something physical to change your energy, or reviewing your previous achievements to remind yourself of your capabilities. Component 5. Possibility. Expansion. Most people think in terms of limitation. They see all the reasons why something won't work or why they're not capable of achieving what they want. People with unstoppable optimism think in terms of possibility. They see opportunities, potential solutions, and ways to grow into the person who can achieve their goals. Practice what-if thinking focused on positive outcomes. Instead of asking, "What if this doesn't work?" ask, "What if this works better than I expected?" Instead of, "What if I'm not good enough?" ask, "What if I'm more capable than I realize?" Instead of, "What if I fail?" ask, "What if success is easier than I think?" This is not denial of reality. It's strategic focus. Negative possibilities and positive possibilities both exist in any situation. Unstoppable optimism means consciously choosing to focus on the positive possibilities, because that focus leads to more action and better results. Study people who have achieved what you want to achieve, not to copy their exact methods, but to expand your sense of what's possible. If someone else has overcome similar obstacles or achieved similar goals, that's proof that it can be done. Their success becomes evidence for your optimism rather than a source of comparison and discouragement. Component 6. Energy management. Unstoppable optimism requires high mental energy, and high mental energy requires protecting yourself from energy drains while actively seeking energy sources. Identify and eliminate energy vampires. Activities, people, and thoughts that drain your mental energy without providing value. This includes excessive news consumption, toxic relationships, unproductive worry, and any activities that leave you feeling depleted rather than energized. Actively cultivate energy sources, activities that restore and increase your mental energy. This includes physical exercise, time in nature, learning new skills, meaningful work, and relationships that inspire and support you. Schedule these activities as non-negotiable parts of your routine. Unstoppable optimism is not a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you develop through practice. Start by choosing one component and focusing on it for 30 days until it becomes automatic. Then add another component. Within 6 months of consistent practice, you'll find that optimistic thinking becomes your default response to any situation. This optimistic mindset becomes a massive competitive advantage because most people default to negative thinking when faced with challenges. While others are paralyzed by doubt and fear, you'll be energized by possibility and opportunity. While others see obstacles, you'll see stepping stones. While others give up, you'll keep pushing forward with unshakable confidence that you'll eventually find a way to succeed. Chapter 10. Mental Models of Peak Performers. The difference between average people and peak performers isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the mental models they use to interpret reality and make decisions. Mental models are the invisible frameworks that determine how you process information, what you pay attention to, and what actions you take. Peak performers have developed specific mental models that automatically generate productive thoughts and effective actions. Understanding and adopting these mental models is the fastest way to upgrade your thinking from average to exceptional. When you change your mental models, you change everything. Your perception of problems becomes perception of opportunities. Your reaction to setbacks becomes fuel for comebacks. Your relationship with failure becomes a pathway to mastery. Mental Model 1. The Growth Framework, Average. People operate from a fixed mindset, believing that their abilities and intelligence are predetermined and unchangeable. They see challenges as threats to their self-image and avoid situations where they might fail or look incompetent. Peak performers operate from a growth mindset, believing that abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and learning. They see challenges as opportunities to improve and actively seek situations that push them beyond their current capabilities. This difference in mental models creates completely different responses to the same situations. When an average person encounters a skill they don't have, they think, "I'm not good at this," and avoid situations that require that skill. When a peak performer encounters a skill they don't have, they think, "I'm not good at this yet," and actively work to develop that skill. Adopt the growth framework by adding "yet" to any limiting statement about yourself. "I'm not confident" becomes "I'm not confident yet." "I don't know how to do this" becomes "I don't know how to do this yet." This simple addition transforms fixed limitations into temporary challenges that can be overcome through effort and learning. Mental Model 2. The ownership framework, Average people operate from a victim mentality, focusing on external factors that are preventing them from succeeding. They spend mental energy complaining about unfair circumstances, bad luck, and other people's behavior. Peak performers operate from an ownership mentality, taking responsibility for their results regardless of external circumstances. They spend mental energy identifying what they can control and influence. This ownership framework doesn't mean accepting blame for everything bad that happens. It means looking for your sphere of influence in every situation and focusing your energy there. Even when external factors are genuinely unfair or difficult, peak performers ask, "Given these circumstances, what can I do to improve my situation?" Practice the ownership framework by ending every complaint with an action step. If you catch yourself thinking, "My circumstances are difficult," add, "So I'm going to focus on what I can control and take one step forward today." If you think external factors are creating challenges, add, "So I'm going to find creative ways to work within these constraints and look for opportunities others are missing." Mental Model 3. The Systems Framework. Average people focus on goals and outcomes, which are largely outside their direct control. They set goals like achieve this result or reach this milestone, and then feel frustrated when progress is slow or inconsistent. Peak performers focus on systems and processes which are entirely within their control. They create daily systems that, when followed consistently, naturally produce the outcomes they want. A goal to lose weight becomes a daily system of specific eating and exercise habits. An income goal becomes a daily system of specific activities that generate value and revenue. A relationship goal becomes a daily system of specific behaviors that build connection and trust. The systems framework creates more consistent action because it focuses on what you do today rather than what you want to achieve someday. It also creates more sustainable motivation because you can win every single day by following your system, regardless of whether you've achieved your ultimate goal yet. Design your own systems by breaking down your biggest goals into daily actions that you can control completely. If your goal is to build a business, your daily system might include making 10 outreach calls, creating valuable content, and learning something new about your industry. If your goal is to get in better shape, your daily system might include 30 minutes of physical activity, tracking your nutrition, and getting adequate sleep. Mental Model 4. The Leverage Framework. Average people think in terms of linear effort. If they want twice the results, they try to work twice as hard. Peak performers think in terms of leverage. They look for ways to get exponential results from the same amount of effort. They understand that working harder is limited by time and energy, but working smarter can produce unlimited results. Leverage comes from 3 sources: tools and technology that multiply your capabilities, systems and processes that multiply your efficiency, and people and relationships that multiply your reach. Peak performers are constantly looking for ways to use these leverage sources to amplify their efforts. Adopt the leverage framework by regularly asking yourself 3 questions. What tools could help me do this faster or better? What systems could help me do this more efficiently? What relationships could help me do this with greater impact? Then actively work to develop the tools, systems, and relationships that will give you the greatest leverage. Mental Model 5. The Long-Term Framework. Average people make decisions based on short-term emotions and immediate gratification. They choose what feels good now rather than what will serve them best in the future. Peak performers make decisions based on long-term vision and delayed gratification. They choose what will serve their future self, even when it requires sacrifice in the present. This long-term thinking creates a massive competitive advantage because most people are optimizing for today while peak performers are optimizing for 10 years from now. While others are choosing comfort, convenience, and immediate pleasure, peak performers are choosing growth, challenge, and long-term success. Develop long-term thinking by regularly asking yourself, how will my future self feel about this decision? What would the person I want to become choose to do right now? Is this decision moving me toward my long-term vision or away from it? Let these questions guide your choices, even when the long-term choice is more difficult in the short term. Mental Model 6. The Abundance Framework. Average people operate from scarcity, thinking, believing that success is limited and that other people's achievements somehow diminish their own opportunities. This creates competition, jealousy, and zero-sum thinking. Peak performers operate from abundance thinking, believing that success can be created and expanded, and that other people's achievements can inspire and inform their own success. Abundance thinking leads to collaboration instead of competition, learning instead of jealousy, and opportunity seeking instead of opportunity hoarding. When you believe that success is abundant, you naturally look for ways to create value for others, which ultimately creates more value for yourself. Practice abundance thinking by celebrating other people's successes instead of comparing yourself to them. When you see someone achieve something you want, ask yourself, what can I learn from their success? How can their achievement inspire my own efforts? What opportunities does their success create for me? These mental models work together to create a completely different way of experiencing reality. When you consistently apply these frameworks, challenges become opportunities, setbacks become lessons, competition becomes inspiration, and your default response to any situation becomes, how can I use this to grow and improve? The key is to practice these mental models consciously until they become automatic. Start with one framework and apply it consistently for 30 days until it becomes natural. Then add another framework. Within 6 months, these peak performance mental models will become your default way of thinking, and your results will reflect this upgrade in your mental operating system. Chapter 11. The 24-Hour Mental Reset Protocol. Sometimes negative thinking becomes so deeply entrenched that you need a complete mental reset. This happens when you've been stuck in negative patterns for weeks or months, when a major setback has shattered your confidence, or when you've allowed toxic influences to poison your mindset. In these situations, gradual change isn't enough. You need a systematic protocol to completely reset your mental state within 24 hours. The 24-Hour Mental Reset Protocol is designed to break you out of any negative thinking spiral and restore your mental clarity, confidence, and motivation. This is not a temporary mood boost. This is a comprehensive system that addresses every aspect of your mental state and creates lasting change in a single day. The protocol consists of 6 phases that must be completed in order within a 24-hour period. Each phase targets a different component of negative thinking and builds momentum for the next phase. The key is total commitment. You cannot skip phases or extend the timeline. This concentrated effort creates breakthrough results that would normally take weeks to achieve. Phase 1. Mental Purging, 2 hours. For the first 2 hours, you're going to identify and externalize every negative thought that's been plaguing your mind. Get a notebook and write down every worry, fear, doubt, and negative belief you've been carrying. Don't edit or filter. Just dump everything onto paper. Write about what's been frustrating you, what you're afraid of, what you've been avoiding, what you think you can't do, and what you believe is wrong with your situation. Be brutally honest. Include the thoughts you're ashamed of, the fears you've never admitted to anyone, and the self-criticisms you repeat in your head. This process serves 2 purposes. First, it gets these thoughts out of your head where they can loop endlessly and onto paper where you can see them objectively. Second, it reveals patterns in your thinking that you might not have noticed while these thoughts were swirling around in your mind. After you've written everything down, read through your list and circle the thoughts that appear most frequently or feel most emotionally charged. These are your primary mental enemies, the specific negative thoughts that have been doing the most damage to your confidence and motivation. Phase 2, pattern interruption, 1 hour. For the next hour, you're going to completely disrupt your normal patterns and routines. Take a cold shower, go for a vigorous walk or run. Clean and organize your living space. Do any physical activity that requires focus and effort. The goal is to create a clear break between your old mental state and your new one. Physical activity changes your brain chemistry, releasing endorphins and other chemicals that naturally improve your mood and mental clarity. The act of breaking your normal routine also signals to your brain that change is happening. During this phase, avoid all input that could reinforce negative thinking. Don't check social media, watch news, or consume any entertainment. Don't have conversations about problems or challenges. Focus entirely on physical activity and environmental changes that support a positive mental state. Phase 3, evidence gathering, 2 hours. For the next 2 hours, you're going to systematically collect evidence that contradicts your negative thoughts. Review your achievements, successes, positive feedback you've received, challenges you've overcome, and skills you've developed. Look through old messages, emails, photos, awards, or any other records of positive experiences and accomplishments. Write down specific examples of times when you succeeded, when others recognized your value, when you overcame obstacles, or when you grew from difficult experiences. The goal is to build an overwhelming case against your negative thoughts. For every negative belief you identified in Phase 1, find at least 3 pieces of evidence that contradict it. If you believe you're not capable, find examples of capabilities you've demonstrated. If you believe you always fail, find examples of successes you've achieved. This phase is crucial because negative thinking creates selective memory. You remember failures vividly while forgetting successes completely. By systematically reviewing your positive experiences, you restore balance to your self-perception and undermine the foundation of negative thinking. Phase 4, future visioning, 1 hour. For the next hour, you're going to create a detailed, compelling vision of your future that excites and motivates you. Write down exactly what you want your life to look like in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. Be specific about what you want to achieve, what kind of person you want to become, what kind of relationships you want to have, and what kind of impact you want to make. Don't limit yourself based on your current circumstances or past failures. Imagine what would be possible if you operated at your full potential. Visualize this future as if it's already happening. Imagine how you'll feel when you achieve these goals, what your typical day will look like, how others will see you, and what new opportunities will be available to you. Make this vision so compelling that you feel genuine excitement about working toward it. Phase 5, system design, 2 hours. For the next 2 hours, you're going to create specific systems and action plans that will turn your vision into reality. Break down your goals into concrete steps. Identify the habits you need to develop. Design accountability systems that will keep you on track. Create daily, weekly, and monthly action plans that focus on the highest impact activities. Identify potential obstacles and develop strategies for overcoming them. Design reward systems that will maintain your motivation and momentum. The key is to make your action plan so specific and detailed that you know exactly what to do every day. Vague goals create uncertainty and anxiety. Specific action plans create confidence and clarity. Phase 6. Commitment and activation. 1 hour. For the final hour, you're going to make a formal commitment to your new mindset and take the first concrete action toward your goals. Write out a personal manifesto that defined who you're choosing to become and what you're committing to do. Sign this manifesto and post it somewhere. You'll see it every day. Then immediately take one significant action toward your most important goal. Make a phone call. Send a message. Start a project. Do something that demonstrates your commitment to change. This final action is crucial because it proves to your brain that this reset is real, not just another temporary motivation boost. When you take immediate action, you begin creating new neural pathways that support your new mindset. The 24-hour period after completing this protocol is critical. You must maintain the mental state you've created by following your new action plans, avoiding negative influences, and continuing to reinforce positive thinking patterns. The reset creates momentum, but maintaining that momentum requires ongoing effort. Most people who complete this protocol report dramatic improvements in their mental state, motivation, and clarity about their direction. The concentrated effort required to complete all 6 phases in 24 hours creates breakthrough results that would normally take weeks or months to achieve gradually. However, this protocol is not magic. It's psychology and neuroscience applied intensively. The results will last only as long as you continue applying the principles and maintaining the systems you create during the reset. Use this protocol when you need a breakthrough, but remember that lasting change requires consistent daily practice. Chapter 12. Advanced Psychological Strategies. At this level of mental mastery, you're ready to learn the most advanced psychological strategies that separate true mental warriors from everyone else. These are not basic positive thinking techniques. These are sophisticated psychological tactics that allow you to maintain unshakable mental strength even in the most challenging circumstances. Strategy 1. Cognitive reframing under pressure. Anyone can maintain positive thinking when things are going well, but peak performers have the ability to instantly reframe negative situations even while experiencing intense stress, pressure, or adversity. This requires developing what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to consciously choose how to interpret any situation. Most people have automatic interpretations that they never question. When something bad happens, their brain immediately frames it as a disaster, a personal failing, or evidence that life is unfair. But you can train yourself to consciously choose more empowering interpretations in real time. When you face a setback, instead of automatically thinking, "This is terrible," you can consciously choose to think, "This is an opportunity to find something better." When you experience rejection, instead of thinking, "I'm not good enough," you can choose to think, I'm one step closer to finding the right fit. The key is having pre-prepared reframes for common negative situations. Spend time now developing empowering interpretations for the types of setbacks you're likely to encounter. When these situations arise, you'll be able to instantly access productive interpretations instead of falling into automatic negative thinking. Strategy 2. Emotional redirection. In martial arts, certain disciplines teach you to redirect an opponent's energy rather than opposing it directly. Emotional redirection teaches you to redirect negative emotions toward productive outcomes rather than trying to suppress or fight them. When you feel anger, instead of trying to calm down, channel that energy into determined action toward your goals. When you feel fear, instead of trying to eliminate it, use it as fuel for preparation and skill development. When you feel frustration, instead of venting or complaining, redirect it into problem solving and innovation. This strategy recognizes that emotions contain energy that can be harnessed for productive purposes. Instead of seeing negative emotions as problems to solve, you see them as resources to redirect. This approach is much more effective than trying to suppress emotions, which usually makes them stronger and more persistent. Strategy 3. Preemptive mental conditioning. Instead of waiting for challenges to arise and then responding to them, you can condition your mind in advance to handle specific types of adversity with predetermined responses. Professional athletes use this technique by visualizing high-pressure scenarios and rehearsing their optimal responses. Military special forces use stress inoculation training to prepare for extreme situations. You can use the same approach to prepare for the mental challenges you're likely to face. Identify the situations that typically trigger negative thinking for you. Criticism, rejection, failure, uncertainty, conflict. Then mentally rehearse handling these situations with confidence and composure. Visualize yourself receiving criticism and responding professionally, experiencing rejection and maintaining self-confidence, facing failure and immediately planning your next attempt. This mental rehearsal creates neural pathways that automatically activate when you encounter these situations in real life. Instead of being caught off guard and defaulting to negative thinking, you'll have well-rehearsed positive responses ready to deploy. Strategy 4. Strategic vulnerability. Most people try to protect themselves from all negative experiences, but this actually makes them more vulnerable when adversity inevitably occurs. Strategic vulnerability involves deliberately exposing yourself to controlled amounts of discomfort, criticism, and failure so that you build genuine resilience. This might mean actively seeking feedback, even when you know it will include criticism. Taking on challenges where failure is possible, or putting yourself in situations where you might be rejected or judged. The goal is not to suffer unnecessarily, but to build genuine confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life brings. When you've voluntarily faced and survived criticism, rejection, and failure in controlled circumstances, these experiences lose their power to trigger negative thinking when they occur naturally. You develop what psychologists call anti-fragility, the ability to actually become stronger from stress and adversity. Strategy 5. Attention hijacking. Your brain can only focus on one thing at a time, So by strategically directing your attention, you can prevent negative thoughts from taking root even when they arise. Develop a library of attention anchors, specific thoughts, activities, or sensations that immediately capture your full attention. This might be focusing intensely on your breathing, engaging in complex mental calculations, describing your physical environment in detail, or thinking about a project that excites you. When you notice negative thinking beginning to emerge, immediately shift your attention to one of these anchors. Don't try to fight the negative thoughts. Simply redirect your attention so completely that the negative thoughts can't maintain their grip on your consciousness. Strategy 6. Mental time travel. Negative thinking often focuses on past failures or future fears, keeping you trapped outside the present moment where all your power actually exists. Mental time travel teaches you to consciously move between past, present, and future in ways that serve your goals. When negative thoughts about the past arise, consciously travel to positive memories that contradict the negative narrative. When fears about the future dominate your thinking, travel to imagined future scenarios where you've successfully overcome current challenges. The key is conscious control over your mental timeline. Instead of being randomly pulled into negative memories or fearful projections, you choose which aspects of past and future to focus on, based on what will support your current goals and emotional state. Strategy 7. Psychological transformation. This involves using other people's negativity and criticism as fuel for your own success, rather than allowing it to damage your confidence. When someone doubts your abilities, criticizes your goals, or tries to discourage you, you transform their negativity into motivation. Instead of being hurt or discouraged by criticism, you think, "I'll prove them wrong." Instead of being demoralized by doubt, you think, "I'll show them what's possible." Instead of being paralyzed by discouragement, you think, "Their lack of vision doesn't limit my potential." This strategy requires developing such strong internal confidence that external negativity actually strengthens your resolve rather than weakening it. You become like a mental converter that absorbs negative energy from others and transforms it into determination and motivation. These advanced strategies require significant practice to master, but they represent the highest level of mental mastery skills. When you can deploy these techniques automatically, you become virtually immune to negative thinking, regardless of what circumstances you face. You develop unshakable mental strength that allows you to maintain focus, confidence, and motivation, even in the most challenging situations. Chapter 13. Building Unbreakable Mental Resilience. Mental resilience is your ability to maintain psychological strength and continue functioning effectively, even when facing extreme stress, adversity, or setbacks. While most people's mental state fluctuates dramatically based on external circumstances, truly resilient people maintain consistent inner strength regardless of what happens around them. Building unbreakable mental resilience requires understanding that resilience is not a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you develop through specific training and practice. The foundation of mental resilience is stress inoculation. This involves gradually exposing yourself to increasing levels of stress and challenge so that your psychological immune system becomes stronger. Just as physical exercise creates physical strength by placing controlled stress on your muscles, psychological exercise creates mental strength by placing controlled stress on your mind. Start with micro stresses that challenge you slightly but don't overwhelm you. This might be taking cold showers, exercising when you don't feel like it, having difficult conversations you've been avoiding, or completing tasks that require sustained focus despite distractions. The key is that these stresses are voluntary and controlled. You're choosing to face small amounts of adversity when you're mentally prepared, which builds your capacity to handle larger amounts of adversity when it arrives unexpectedly. Gradually increase the intensity of these challenges as your resilience grows. What felt stressful last month should feel manageable this month, allowing you to take on bigger challenges. This progressive overload principle works for mental strength just as it works for physical strength. The second component of resilience is emotional regulation under pressure. Most people's emotions become chaotic when they face significant stress, which clouds their judgment and reduces their effectiveness. Resilient people maintain emotional stability even in crisis situations. Develop emotional regulation through breathing techniques that you practice daily and can deploy instantly when needed. Practice emotional labeling when you feel strong emotions arising. Instead of being overwhelmed by anger, anxiety, or frustration, mentally label these emotions. I notice I'm feeling anxious right now. This creates psychological distance between you and the emotion, preventing it from controlling your thinking and behavior. The third component is meaning-making capability. Resilient people are able to find purpose and meaning even in painful experiences. They don't just survive adversity, they use it as fuel for growth, wisdom, and contribution to others. Develop the habit of asking, how can this experience make me stronger, wiser, or more valuable to others? When facing any challenge, this question shifts your focus from victim thinking to growth thinking, transforming adversity from something that happens to you into something that develops you. Keep a resilience journal where you record lessons learned from difficult experiences. Review this journal regularly to remind yourself of how challenges have contributed to your growth and to develop confidence in your ability to benefit from future adversity. True mental resilience means that your inner strength becomes independent of external circumstances. You maintain confidence, clarity, and motivation whether things are going well or poorly. You become like a deeply rooted tree that bends with the storm but never breaks, always returning to its natural upright position once the storm passes. Chapter 14. Your Complete Mental Transformation Roadmap. You now have all the knowledge and tools needed to completely transform your mental life. But knowledge without implementation is worthless. This final chapter provides you with a complete roadmap that turns everything you've learned into a systematic transformation process. Your mental transformation will happen in 4 distinct phases, each lasting approximately 30 days. Each phase builds on the previous one, creating momentum and establishing increasingly sophisticated mental skills. Phase 1. Foundation building. days 1 to 30. During your first 30 days, you will establish the basic awareness and interruption skills that form the foundation of all advanced mental mastery. Your primary focus is developing the ability to recognize negative thoughts as they arise and interrupt them before they can influence your emotions and actions. Your daily practice includes 3 core activities. First, conduct hourly mental check-ins where you pause and observe your current thoughts and emotional state. Second, practice the 5-step thought interruption process whenever you catch negative thinking. Recognize, interrupt, challenge, replace, action. Third, complete a daily mental inventory where you review the day's thinking patterns and identify areas for improvement. During this phase, don't worry about perfect execution. Your goal is simply to develop awareness of your thinking patterns and begin practicing intervention techniques. Phase 2. Pattern elimination. Days 31 to 60. During your second 30 days, you will systematically identify and eliminate your most destructive negative thinking patterns. Create a negative thinking log where you record every instance of negative thinking along with its trigger, emotional impact, and the intervention you used. Look for patterns in your triggers and develop specific strategies for handling your most common negative thinking scenarios. Begin implementing environmental changes that reduce your exposure to negative thinking triggers. Phase 3. Positive programming. Days 61 to 90. During your third 30 days, you will actively install new positive thinking patterns that automatically generate motivation, confidence, and solution-focused thinking. Your daily practice includes cognitive rehearsal of positive thinking patterns, visualization of desired outcomes, and systematic evidence gathering that supports optimistic beliefs about your capabilities. Focus on building strong positive feedback loops by taking daily actions that prove your positive thoughts are accurate. Every time you act despite fear, persist through difficulty, or achieve a goal you previously thought was impossible, you're programming your brain to default to positive expectations. Phase 4. Mastery integration. Days 91 to 120. During your fourth 30 days, you will integrate all your mental mastery skills into a seamless system that operates automatically without conscious effort. Your daily practice includes stress testing your mental skills through voluntary challenges, practicing advanced psychological strategies, and developing the systems needed for lifelong mental mastery. By the end of Phase 4, positive thinking will be your natural default state. Negative thoughts will still arise occasionally, but they'll feel foreign and uncomfortable. You'll handle them automatically without losing emotional balance or behavioral momentum. Throughout all 4 phases, track your progress obsessively. Keep detailed records of your mental patterns, emotional states, and behavioral choices. Measure your progress not just by how you feel, but by the actions you take and the results you achieve. After completing the initial 4-phase transformation, your ongoing practice focuses on maintenance and continued optimization. Continue your daily mental hygiene practices. Regularly stress test your mental skills and look for opportunities to help others develop mental mastery. Remember that mental transformation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Your mind will continuously evolve throughout your life, and maintaining mental mastery requires lifelong commitment to growth and improvement. Conclusion: your new beginning. The choice is yours. You can continue living with the mental patterns that have kept you stuck, or you can commit to the systematic process that will transform your mind and your life forever. The tools are in your hands. The roadmap is clear. The only question remaining is whether you have the courage to begin. Your mind is your most powerful tool for creating the life you want. When you master your thoughts, you master your emotions. When you master your emotions, you master your actions. When you master your actions, you master your results. And when you master your results, you master your life. Start immediately. Don't wait for perfect conditions, better circumstances, or more motivation. Begin implementing these techniques today, right now, with whatever time and energy you have available. The longer you delay, the longer you remain trapped in negative thinking patterns that are limiting your potential and destroying your happiness. Every successful person you admire has dealt with the exact same negative thoughts you have. The difference is they learn to recognize these thoughts for what they are, mental noise, not reality, and they develop the skill to act despite them. This is your moment. This is your opportunity to finally break free from the negative thinking that has held you back for too long. The question is not whether you can do this. The question is whether you will. Kill your negative thinking. Transform your mind. Create your future. The journey begins now.